Okay, triple check. Sounds good. Video is good. Magic spoiler. All right. Days 3 through 6. I haven't covered these in a while. Had a busy last weekend. Some news. I am planning on buying a house. I had an offer accepted. Me and my wife have been very busy last weekend, so my priorities have been addressing that. And you're here for the magic cards, so I'll get started. Um, all right. We have a Exclude Starforge. I think we've gotten a different version of this already. In case you weren't sure, tap X and tapped artifacts. You make something bigger, power wise. It's not bad. It's pseudo like God. It's not even as good as what I originally thought because you could only do it at sorcery speed. So that's kind of a bit of a drawback. You kind of telegraph that you're going to make something really big, and then everyone's going to be worried who it's going to be coming at. Yeah, it's it's not that good. I wouldn't say it's very pushed. It's strictly worse than the Gruul land that could do it at instant speed. Now the Gruul land's not as good because you have to sink a bunch of mana into it. Having a hard time remembering. I used to play it all the time in Ponza when I played a lot of Modern. I used to win with it. I used to activate it, target my bird, and get around Ensnaring Bridge with it. I don't know why I'm having such a hard time remembering the name for how much I've played with it. Plus X, it's a land. Color identity is Gruul. Guessing Wolfram. Thank you, Dad. I couldn't remember it to save my life. But it's just a strictly worse version than Kissing Wolfram, in my opinion. I think the sorcery speed versus its speed makes that big of a difference. Now, the Pinnacle Starcage, different story. I feel like this is going to be a nice CDH staple. It exiles all artifacts and creatures made at 2 value or less until this leaves the field. In CDH, everything costs 2 or less. It's really obnoxious. It's a really fast style of gameplay. Hell, I would say this is even effective in like as a sideboard option in 60 card lists, just because it hits a pretty wide variety of permanents. The cool part about it is it has a funny sync where you put things from exile into the graveyard. So like if this dies, people don't get that stuff back, and you get a 2/2 robot for each card put in the graveyard that way. So you can make a good army out of this thing. Compared to Secluded Starforge, Starcage blows this thing out of the water in terms of this is a rare, this is a mythic, this rare is a lot better. Oh, we got some Japanese cards. I could tell it's Japanese because fun fact, actually studied Japanese in high school. I did 3 years of study of it. I'm good at reading and writing, and then I butcher the language. Uh, it's it's an uncommon, about what I expect. Pretty fair for what it does. Well, this one isn't bad for 5 mana. Surveil X for X number of artifacts, and then you draw 3. If you care about graveyard synergies, this could go pretty deep. And then it's at instant speed too. Yeah, that's kind of significant. I don't know. That might have some play in some worlds out there. If you care about milling and you play a lot of artifacts, maybe that's for you. Man, this sorcery clause really kills this card for me You only activate it as a sorcery, so you have to like do it on your turn and plan to do a lot of damage to your own thing. I guess it disincentivizes people to block your creature, and he kind of puts your opponents in a lose-lose situation. So either they block your really big thing, and you draw cards from it, or it hits them and they lose a bunch of life. Now it depends on what they're blocking with too. So if they block with a 1/1 or a 2/2, it's the amount of damage is mitigated, but that's still several cards that you're seeing because this deals 1 damage to the thing you target as well. It's not bad, but it's not as good because of the sorcery clause. It's a little bit of a bait of a card, but you kind of need, in order for this to be good, you need something that makes people consider blocking, and that means it has to be really big. Dual Sun Technique. There are, fun fact, only 4 cards in Magic that give something double strike at instant speed, and currently only 2 of them cost 2 mana, if I remember right. And I know this because I love playing these gotcha effects, these combat tricks that kill people, especially in Commander, where you're only trying to do 21. If you get 11 power into something, in this case, uh, yeah, it'll even draw you a card if it has a +1/+1 counter on it. So super good. 11 power is the magic number. You cast this on a unblocked creature, commander rather, and someone dies. Mm. Honor might not seem like much, but because it targets a creature, this is going to be a feather staple. The feather wants all these like single target, really cheap instants and sorceries that also cantrips, and kind of does everything you want. Most of the time, they play these effects for like, I don't know, really minor effects. All they care about is that if it draws a card and makes something and targets something, this actually puts like a permanent stat increase. So I think the featherless will enjoy this a lot. Ruthros Psionicist. It kind of fits. It's giving the support of casting stuff on other people's turns. Um, it's hard to cast a spell on everybody's turn. It's even harder to cast 2 spells a turn. This might find a home in the new lists like Shatola would appreciate this because they like to play expensive things. But my version of Shatola, it's all uh, spells that have cost reduction on itself. So I don't even know if I really need this. But if you find yourself wanting coupons, then this isn't a bad spot for people that built Shatola, unfortunately, the hard way. If you want my opinion, there's enough free spells in Magic where you don't need to be doing stuff like this, but it's an option. I think there are other decks that care about this, like Ifara cares if you cast 2 spells on people's turns. It's the blue-white god. Or is that the one that makes you want to draw cards on people's turns? I know there's some. Yeah. So this cares about spells coming on other people's turns, but there are commanders out there that exist that care about casting 2 spells a turn, and it's not a bad fit. I think Jorah, he's the Is It Merfolk, cares about casting 2 spells, and it makes you draw a card. You put that in there. Not bad. Hmm. That might be like a sub theme because I'm seeing all kinds of cards in the commons and uncommon section that care about casting 2 spells a turn. Evando, Waking Heaven. It looks like we're just going down the line of cards that are monocolored that give you a bunch of mana. We got the blue one that does this for artifacts. It's basically Academy. Um, we have this one, which is basically Gaia's Cradle. We have the white one, which is Sarah Sanctum. I don't know if the black or the white one's been accounted for. Let me look that up. But they all produce absurd amount of mana, I think. If you make the station of 12. I guess planet's unique enough. Planet. Artifact. Creature. Oh, okay. I guess the black one isn't as fun. The black one lets you sack a creature and draw cards equal to power. That's actually pretty good. That's a lot of card advantage from a land. Oddly enough, it's one of the cheaper ones. The white one makes a token of an enchantment or artifact. It's not bad, but nowhere near as powerful as these three, that's for sure. And then the red one kind of gets the ugly stick. It's pretty shitty. You make a bot and then you get a anthem effect temporarily. It's kind of similar to Castle Breath. I feel like I wonder why they didn't push this a little harder because this feels weak as fuck. A little disappointing for a mythic slot. Thanks, Yersim Rodriguez. I hope you learned something. I love talking about Magic cards, especially new ones, and how you could play them in your decks, and if they're worth you playing or not. Um, Looming Class Frigate. I like the floor on this thing. Yeah. The floor, like most of the spacecraft, I find to be a bit of a bait as a mechanic. But when the lower floor has a useful effect and it's cheap, like this is a useful effect, and the I guess the bar that you have to cross is nice. I guess you'd say you can play the same turn, tap something, 2 power, and it's online. You have an anthem effect that you only invested 2 mana into, and a tap body. The other thing is just like whatever. I feel like if you're pursuing the 12, it's a weaker ceiling, but you're playing this for the floor. Personally, I feel like you go for the ceiling, the 12 counters when your board's getting stuffed out and you need an evasive attacker, which flying does, and then lifelink means you get to attack with reckless abandon. You gain life, so it's much less effective for opponents to tag you back. It's good in aggro list for sure. Pinnacle Emissary. Cast an artifact. You make a 1/1 drone that's got flying. Can only block creatures with flying. For the decks that want this, they'll want it. The people that want this already play Psy Master Thopterus. They already play the 2 4-drop enchantments that make Thopter tokens. They also play the 3-drop that makes Mirrors or wins if you have a bunch of artifacts in your graveyard. Yeah, they can. I think the people that play Psy Master Thopterus will want this. Obviously, Psy is the like blue, and you wouldn't be able to play. But I'm just saying, like the people that want to be generating an absurd quantity of artifacts. There's a couple of lists that want to do that. In these colors, though, the first thing that comes to mind is like Grizzlax. Grizzlax is the red-blue dragon that came out. Or is Grizzlax the mono blue? Is it Prismari that I'm thinking of? Galazeth. There we go. This guy. Enters, you make a treasure token. Artifacts you can control can be tapped per mana of any color. Obviously, if you're casting a bunch of artifacts, you're making a bunch of mana dorks to use with Galazeth here. That's an application where you want to just, it doesn't matter the type of token you make, you just want to make an artifact. Now, a flying artifact is useful. Now, if you combine this with, like, say, uh, Coat of Arms, you have a lethal board on your hands. And there's a lot of effects that are similar to Coat of Arms. The other big one that comes to mind is Shared Animosity. It gives +1/+0 for everything that shares a creature type, and it's one sided. It only affects your board, which is slightly better than Coat of Arms because it's symmetrical, affects everyone's stuff. Let me show you Coat of Arms. I like Shared Animosity a little bit more too because it's cheaper. It's 2 mana less. It When you go cheaper to the ground in terms of cost, it lets you string multiple spells together. Um, Usually, the person who casts the most spells, sees the most cards, wins. Um, this can clunk up your hand or clunk up your board, and it telegraphs that something terrible is going to happen soon. Hardlight Containment. Now, it doesn't seem like much. You enchant an artifact you control, and you get this on thin ice effect or chain to the rocks effect. You get to exile something. It has to be a creature until this aura leaves, and then the enchanted permanent gets ward 1. Um, I'm a huge fan of Chain to the Rocks and On Thin Ice. I pretty much play On Thin Ice on every deck exclusive for how easy it is to turn on. You just need a snow permanent. You fill your deck with snow lands. If you don't run it as a removal piece, I recommend you start doing that. It's 1 mana. The efficiency is wild. It's easy to have a target for it. But it's basically the same effect of this. It's just this one's slightly harder, a little more narrow. You need to target an artifact you control for this to be online. But if you're playing a dedicated artifact list, uh, not hard to do. And I think there's a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of mono white commanders that care about artifacts. The big one, I think he's like one of the most popular mono white commanders. He should be top 10. I'm surprised that he's not. Tashar, Oswald, these are the decks that will want this. Even SRAM, where you play a bunch of equipment, you'll probably have an artifact consistently then to enchant with that. I guess any Voltron list would want this enchantment. Yeah, SRAM cares about auras and equipment. This guy right here. You probably have a high enough artifact count, not account, you know what I mean? Uh, where you could reliably enchant an artifact you control with this. This thing would be really annoying to deal with. Lightstall Inquisitor. I love playing Brago, and I love doing little tempo things like this, especially when you can do it multiple times a turn. What's also pretty wild about it is I think you get to see people's the card that they exile with it. Let's look it up. Let's be certain. Lightstall Inquisitor. It doesn't stay reveal. It does reveal the card. So what's kind of nice is about this thing is it's cheap, uh, and it gives us information about what's in people's hands, and it's a tempo play because it makes their stuff a lot more expensive. So it delays their game. If you play it in Brago, you do it over and over again, and hopefully you nab every card out of people's hands. And if you have the right other stuff in play, you could even take this a little further. There's a lot of things that like lock people out of playing stuff from places other than their hand, like Dranith Magistrate would be really goddamn annoying. You just don't get to play stuff in your hand at all, ever. I'd be willing to give it a try. It does suffer the same effect that like most flickerable creatures have, and that's like you don't want to block with them because they have such a lousy toughness. So it's just like a hood ornament on your flicker car. Uh, when I choose a lot of my permanents in Brago, I prefer them to be creatures with big beefy butts, so they do something a little bit more, like deterring aggro. And when you're playing Brago, you bring a lot of unwanted attention your way. And your stupid little things with weak butts, your opponents won't have a second hesitation attacking into you, and you just take a lot of chip damage. And you multiply that by 3 because there's 3 turns other than yours in a turn cycle. Yeah, Good thing Nightmare is good too. The Minnon, the right hand. Um, I'm not the biggest fan of this kind of effect, these future side effects, because we got so many of them at this point. Doesn't feel very original. The only cool part about it is he feeds into himself. Like what separates him from the future side effects is he gives all your artifacts the ability to tap for mana. Um, it's a card advantage monster. It just adds fuel. You play more artifacts off the top of your library, you have more mana to cast more things off the top of your deck. The equation's pretty damn simple. It's effective at what it does. I just find it very unoriginal. Yeah, I you don't even need the warp support from this. It just does everything you want and need on its own because it lets you play stuff off the top of your library. It has to be specifically artifacts, but like if you're playing an artifact centric deck, uh, it's pretty backbreaking. Like from the command zone, uh, I'd have my thumb on the panic button every time this thing touches the field. Try to kill it on sight. There's just too much damn value. I can't talk about this. This is a very double edged sword. I guess the people that love hugs are going to enjoy this because it lets everybody have a free spell. The only difference is, or the one sided part about it is, it's a one sided time twister. You shuffle your hand in graveyard in your library, draw 7. Doesn't affect anyone else. So the best time to play left walking is when everyone else is empty handed. That makes it a situational card. I want my 99 cards that I draw. I want them to be useful and playable the turn I draw them. I don't want things to be stuck in my hand because of a situation not being good. The last thing I want to be doing is playing this when my opponents have a full grip of very expensive cards in their hand and I just give them an avenue to cast multiple a turn. It's a bad idea. My motto about HUD cards is it's not the person playing the cards that wins, it's always the person immediately to the right of that person. The person next in the turn order, because they will have all their resources plus theirs maxed out and ready to go. It's usually that guy that wins when you go in a clockwise fashion. Might form Harmonizer. Landfall, you get to double the power of target creature until end turn. It doesn't seem that impactful, but it actually kind of is. There's not a lot of effects that double power. It's because it has an infinite ceiling. Obviously, you're limited by how many lands you can play a turn or how many fetches you have, but that's probably enough. Like, if you have one fetch and one big evasive creature, that's probably enough to kill people. Like, I think this is a pretty scary threat on a board on its own. Hell, you can even target itself if you got nothing else better to do. And then you force people to trade off pieces they don't want to give up. Yeah, Mystic Forge building the Urza would be good. Instead of whirling with Urza or Wurzying, whatever the hell that people call it, you just cast stuff off the top of your library with the other guy. It's a little more effective than playing the random game. Like, I would use Urza when you brick and hit a land on top. Is the moment you shuffle your library and rip something off the top, and then you go back to what you were doing with the other guy. Hmm. This is kind of a cool uncommon. You add 1 mana of any color, it's 3 mana, it's a crappy mana rock, but it's 7 ability. You sack it to draw X cards or X number of differently named lands you control. In Commander, you have a lot of differently named lands, so um, I think this is better. If I had to pay 3 mana for a rock, this would be in my contention list of things I would play. Just for the sheer amount of cards that it draws, and when you have nothing else better to do. Imagine how many games we have all played where you become empty-handed and you have all the mana in the world. Man, I'd be grateful if I had this lying around, because not only do we have a lot of mana, we have a lot of mana left over to cast spells after we see a bunch of cards. It's got a lot of sweet utility, a lot of like end game potential packaged into this. Yeah, I do think Wizards can be pretty stingy. They have to keep some things in check. So far, we've seen a lot of that stuff with like the sorcery speed. That's been a little disappointing. Like I predicted, they are going to print the red white one of these like lands that they haven't finished the cycle of, the cycling one and the basic check lands. I hope they print the red and blue one, but I think that would upset people. They might not do it because there's only 10 unique cards in the commander decks from this set. So imagine how pissed people would be if 4 of those 10 unique cards were just lands. I mean, I think most people are pretty irritated that 2 of the 10 unique cards are lands, but I'm pretty happy personally. Earthros Research Craft. Super sweet floor. At 3 charge counters, whenever you cast an artifact, you draw a card. There aren't a lot of effects that do this. What's also pretty funny is it also puts a charge counter in itself. I wonder how much this is going for, because it just feeds into itself. There are 2 cards that draw off of playing artifacts. That's the Vidalkin. He's 4 mana, and then there is Joyra, the Weatherlight Captain, the 4-drop one. Slim pickings, and the reason being is casting a lot of artifacts is not hard to do, so you have to be kind of careful with these effects, drawing off of casting them anyways. These lists kind of want eggs. They want to reduce artifacts to 0, cast them, and then you just draw your whole deck. It's usually what they do, and then they play spells that bounce all the artifacts back to their hands, and then it's kind of blast off from that point. Paradoxical Outcome, Hercule's Recall, those are the things that people play. Bounce their artifacts in, they lead off with their coupons, like their Ethereum Sculptor esque effects, and then they just go to town, casting everything else for free. Surge Conductor, another non token artifact enters, you proliferate. That's a pretty open space. Most artifacts that are worth you playing are non creatures, so I guess it just has to be non token. Okay, never mind. Creatures still creature artifacts still trigger this. There are a lot of artifacts in the game of Magic that care about counters. Obviously, the commander deck will, but there's a lot of obnoxious things in the world that uses counters on resources, and it is an artifact. One of my favorite artifacts that's actually budget friendly, Transmogrifying Wand. It's like a penny to play. If you want some good budget ideas, this thing comes with 3 charge counters. You remove 1 to turn a creature into a 2/4 elk or ox permanently. And then, obviously, if we are just proliferating passively with Surge Conductor, we will never run out of charge counters to turn people's things into oxes. Wow. Solar Array is kind of special to talk about. You add 1 mana of any color. When you when you next cast an artifact spell this turn, let's spell against Sunburst. Oh, never mind. I thought it was artifacts, but since it says next, it's just the first next thing you cast, which is a little disappointing. Sunburst, it cares about colors you invested into something. So you would have to be in a multicolor deck and be playing artifacts for you to get a lot of like desire from this. I don't know. And it gives charge counters too. It's not as crazy as I had originally thought. Throwing Peacemaker is pretty annoying. 2 counters whenever someone commits a crime, proliferate. Committing a crime is obnoxiously easy to do. I mean, you could gander by just looking at the text box in these parentheses what triggers this, and based on the size of this paragraph, you know it's a lot of stuff. If your opponents do anything, you proliferate your board. That's probably what it should say. Now, if I had to be specific, whenever someone targets a opponent, cards in the graveyard, cards in play, cards in your hand, targets anything. That's a crime being committed that's so heinous that our peacemaker has to get involved. And then he makes himself bigger, and God knows what else in play, puts counters on stuff. Yeah, Solar is not bad in the guideline for sure. RoboCop. It does kind of give me RoboCop feelings. It actually reminds me of the robots from Borderlands when they introduced that enemy type. That's what it reminds me of. Borderlands 2 and later. Huh. Moxite Refinery is kind of weird. It lets you move stuff around. I guess it's nice if something's about to die, so you don't lose all the investment you made onto something. Just move the counters onto something else. I think that's the most like common application. But I mean, if you are playing a deck full of the Hyperion bots, uh, constructors are probably the better version that I'm thinking of. They're the ones that like they look like they're made out of cardboard boxes. They're yellow, not white, but similar to this in terms of like the shoulder pads. Long range sensor is kind of cool. Whenever you attack a player, so if you have three creatures, you could put a max of three creatures, three players, opponent wise. You could max put on 3 charge counters a turn. You can remove 2 to discover 4, and the cost of that is just 1 mana and removing those 2 counters. In the right lists, you can discover a lot of cards with this thing. I like how it's called a long range sensor, like it's a probe flying around in space, and then like the keyword on here is the word discover. It's just like thematically a chef's kiss, and it's actually good for a deck that cares a lot about proliferating. I would love drawing one of these. Insight Engine, another card advantage piece. You put a counter on it, and you draw a card for each counter on it. Most of the time, when decks are just playing the counter theme and they're just dumping stuff, they have multiple ways of putting counters on stuff. Like Atrax is a perfect example. Atrax would want this. You activate it once, you the counter on it, and then uh, Atraxa starts triggering. So it goes to 2 counters, and then you don't activate it until your end step on the following turn, because then you'll okay, let me do the math. You activate it once, goes to end step, you go to 2 counters. You go to the next turn. Now you wait till end step, Traxa puts the counter on, and then you activate it for its 2 mana to see 4 cards. So in a 2 turn revolution, this thing has paid for itself mana wise. Pretty fun. Oh, Deep Shaker Titan is a finisher. This is definitely a game ender. You turn all your artifacts into 3/3s, and then each artifact creature control has melee, trample, and haste. So you just make an army of 3/3s. If you cast this and you don't win the game with it, then uh, I don't know. You're doing something wrong. You have a really crappy board on your hands. It's basically the crappier version of Hoof Behemoth. It kind of does the same kind of type esque and feel. You drop the bomb, you win with the bomb. And that brings us to the end. Yeah, this is why I don't like doing the spoiler videos every day. Like, so I don't know if you could see the scrolling bar on the right, but we get to the Vernal Fen. Uh, half of all the Magic spoilers that were worth mentioning and talking about happened in the first 2 days of spoiler season, and then the other half has been spoiled over the last 4 days. And I probably wrapped up the video much faster. All the good stuff comes out at first, gets everyone freaking jacked and tuned in and ready to watch. Imagine how boring it would be if I made one of these spoiler videos every day. The spoilers end on the 18th, so there's only 2 days left. Um, you can expect me to make a video about that on the 18th, just to wrap up the spoiler videos. And then we're going to do deck techs. I've already finished uh, the Infinite Guideline. And then I'm working on the other lists here. Yeah. Thanks, Dad. Let's see. So far, I haven't seen any other legendary creatures that have caught my eye. The mono blue guy, like I said, he's powerful, but he's boring. It's not hard to break that. I have no interest in doing that, so I'm not going to do it. But uh, these four I'm particularly excited about. Make your votes, determine the order. Sammy and Sazeril are the bottom. Tip the scales. Even when your commander's done being played, you change your vote. So, everyone, thanks for watching. Have a great night.